podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
All right, here for the midweek pod, we're going to cover all the latest news and maybe take a few questions as well. I am with Wayne. How is it going?
It's going pretty well, thank you, Ed. My team already like to watch at the weekends, so I've got a really cheery disposition about me, as you can tell.
I asked you in the preamble, how is it hanging? And you were like, low. To the left.
You put me on this spot. I don't know how to answer these questions. I'm a simple, how are you, chap? Fair to middling.
Very good.
Yeah.
Were you at the INEOS Manchester United executive meeting at the INEOS HQ in Knightsbridge this week?
No, I was.
Your invite get lost in the post?
I did some work with Martin Edwards for something else.
I saw.
And he... unfortunately, he's not in a position to offer me a managerial job, so I'm not in the running should there be a change of power at the top. Yeah, so...
Well, I was at the meeting, and we've made a decision on Ten Hag.
Oh, yeah.
No. I'm sworn to secrecy, I can't tell you. Although it is... I guess the serious point there is it's interesting how little leaks out of the new executive team at United, right? I mean, just nothing. Whereas before, everyone had an opinion and their first call was to their favourite journalist, including Ed Woodward, who had a few favourites of his own. So
also so far, that's what you need to say so far, because there's not really, this is the first test of that. And I guess if there is news, and news will leak inevitably at some point, then we'll have a greater grasp on, really not necessarily knowing who the leak is, but knowing kind of where it's, from which direction it flows. And this is the first test of that. I will say it's been refreshing. I know that a lot of people, we had this conversation just after the cup final, then we were like, INEOS need to put out some kind of clarification on the manager's future. And to be fair, they did. Even though I was against that, I remember it was having a back and forth about that. Generally, I didn't think, that sort of no news is good news kind of person. You don't need to feed the media. They did. They don't now, but they might have to if things keep going as merrily as they are on the pitch. But it is refreshing. It's refreshing to know that you have these meetings, you know that the meeting's happening, nothing's coming out about them. And that's enough, right? I mean, it's enough to know that there's a meeting happening. You're waiting for some kind of information about what's happening there. We might hear one or two things, but there's nothing so far that suggests that anybody is keen to be chief whistleblower, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, usually that happens when there's some kind of agenda someone has, and there, as we know, there was some politics at the top at United, which has changed, given that almost everyone is new. New CEO, new CFO, new technical director, new director of football, new head of analytics, new head of recruitment. I mean, it's a whole lot. Medical department last year. So, like, very, very few reasons for someone to have an agenda and to start, what is their benefit in leaking something? And generally, I mean, I think in business, there's rarely a reason to communicate publicly unless, like, one, you're marketing something, or two, you have to. Right? It's not like there's a load of Coca-Cola fans out there clamoring for news on the head of operations at their Atlanta plant, right? It's like, I know football's very different, and we're all passionate about it, and we all give a shit, and we've all got an opinion. But I suspect the methodology of Sir Jim is to go, we make the decision, it's our decision, then we tell you.
Good.
So that's why they're keeping it close to the chest. And look, he said over and over again, we're going to walk to the right decision, not run to the wrong one. So I think they're quite methodological, if I can get that word out, in their approach to these things. I mean, most of the time I've kind of agreed with it. On this one, I think the opportunity cost is quite high, right? So if you're of the belief that Ten Hag's model and philosophy of football is just never going to work because we've got quite a large data set now, then every game he remains in charge and there isn't someone else who could hopefully make it better, but no guarantees, right? Then that's a lost opportunity and the season could get away from us very quickly. If you're of the belief that there are extenuating circumstances, he's the right guy, we just need to give him time to work with these younger players, get through the injuries from last season and integrate new players in the squad, and he just needs the time in order to make it work and it's going to work, then you're going to walk to the right decision. And it seems, I suspected that they weren't going to rush him to a sacking. And they were going to take their time over things, and we'll just hopefully, I mean, like the way you solve this problem is win a bunch of games, right? So hopefully between the end of this international window and the start of the next one, we get a few wins in there. There aren't that many games, mind you. Oh, well, Premier League games. There's a few others.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the recent run of games is, like someone put it out there, and the Spurs game was difficult, admittedly. It's not a game that on paper you said that you should definitely win, but it was a winnable run of fixtures, and the spate of results was fairly damning. I'm not quite as convinced as you that I didn't think that there was going to be change, even notwithstanding what they said about walking to the right decision. I felt after Spurs, it's a matter of when to pull the trigger. And not that I'm not necessarily alarmist about the results of the weekend or even the Porto one, because I think 3-3 is like you've got a myriad ways to reach 3-3, right? Choose your own adventure there, and United chose the worst one. And it made everything feel like it was 10 times worse. But 3-3, if you'd have said beforehand, it's going to be entertaining, and United are going to draw the game, not necessarily a bad result, and not want to hang the manager on. However, you're not hanging the manager on individual results. What you're now looking at is when you see the bad results, are you seeing progress after those results? And the first thing you look for is a performance. It was slightly better against Porto, slightly better against Aston Villa, but it was still a million miles away from where you want it to be. And I think this landscape of football, where there are not very many convincing choices, Tuchel being the most obvious outstanding unemployed candidate, he doesn't scream to me long-term planning to bring him in, because he's never been anywhere for a long period of time. There's nothing that says, for example, Liverpool and Arsenal, they put in Arteta and they put in Klopp, and they had long-term models, and the relative benefits of that, the benefits being the still second best challengers to Manchester City, which I suspect any Manchester United manager employed and getting to that level and not pushing on, maybe not Liverpool, because Liverpool won the European Cup, but getting to Arsenal's level, put them in a different job, put them in a different spotlight, the perception of what that achievement is would be very different indeed. The favourable press that they would receive, I don't think Arteta would be getting if he was Manchester United manager. So you've got, I know there are different mitigating circumstances. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is a full season of football, 75% of it. We're not going to win the title. Nobody really expected us to win the title despite the financial outlay, because everyone has preached small steps. Even the ownership has preached that. So they've given the manager a little bit of leeway there. So taking in the circumstances of there's not an outstanding candidate, if you pull the trigger, it's likely to be the caretaker who was already at the club, unless you bring Ollie back, which isn't going to happen, as much as we romanticised about that last time. All those circumstances, you're probably not wise to pull the trigger on the manager. Just leave him in there for a little bit longer, because there are, regardless of how far you say they were influential, there were still mitigating circumstances last season which led to that underperformance. So now you give the manager enough rope to say, all right, this is definitely, categorically not going to move forward with you. And it's funny because I think maybe a lot of people are there. I wouldn't have been surprised to have seen that decision reached already. But there are still some little bits of saying, is there something there? Can you turn this around? Even if the evidence doesn't seem compelling, give him that opportunity. It sort of makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of come to the opinion that Ten Hag is so muddled in his thinking that he's never going to find the right answer here. And it's not a process, and processes don't have to be linear, right? It's not a straight line between A and B in any kind of business or learning a skill and all of that kind of stuff. It's just how long do you need? And I kind of think 124 games over 3 seasons is plenty enough evidence to show that he has not settled on an idea of how he wants to play his team, right? So the fairly compact, direct, vertical game of the first season, which coincided with a massive hot streak for Marcus Rashford, now looks, in the context of last season and this season, like an aberration, right? Not part of a step towards a final better goal. Last season and this season look the same to me. Injuries or no injuries. He has had 2 philosophies crammed into one. One is, I want to win the ball high up the press. As Jurgen Klopp said, there's no creative player more creative than the Gegenpress, right? If you win the ball high up the pitch, you create chances. That's his attacking philosophy, and move it forward very quickly after you've counter-pressed. But because he's trying to get 4 or 5 players joining that press, big hole, leave gaps, need the defence to drop back, so the rest defence is quite deep. And so you got these 2 completely muddled philosophies, and he's left it there all the time until he panics and goes, okay, well, hard game away at Aston Villa, therefore we're going to drop into a mid-block and defend in this compact fashion, which is perfectly reasonable for a tough away game, perfectly reasonable of a one-off, but it's not a one-off. There is plenty of context. So anyway, that's my thinking. I think the club's thinking would be quite different, because they're and the other thing about Ten Hag, I think, is the risk reward. And this is what, he's not found that right balance. We can't attack well and defend well in the same game. We can only do one or the other. But the club's thinking, I think, is slightly different than a kind of fans thinking, isn't it? They're thinking, okay, how do we manage our process? And do we really gain any benefit from getting rid of this guy now to install an interim? Probably rude to get rid of the whole coaching team when we bring a new manager in. And is this the right balance now? Their risk reward is a different calculation. I think probably that's why they're being quite conservative, even if us as fans and pundits are looking at it going, it's never going to get better.
No, but we had that conversation in the summer when we were bringing all these people in. It was it's their risk, right? So their risk isn't Ten Hag; it's all the people that they've brought in because they backed in with those people, or they.
Well, they want to get to a situation where the director of football and the club philosophy is overarching, and you can move coach in, move coach out without having to change everything all of the time. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And we're in a world where, many clubs change managers every 3 years, and it doesn't have to be chaotic. So,
do you know, though, I will say this, the best part, some of the best part of this last 10 years, the best periods have been the chaos. I know that's in relation to the rest of it. I'm not advocating for saying that's a good thing, by the way. I'm saying putting that in context of the bumpiness of it all, and it's definitely not by design. So that's the funny thing. And both of those periods came from autocrats, Van Gaal and Ten Hag. You're not quite sure what they were trying to do, but when they had clearly no control over any of it, that's when it's been the most entertaining and probably the best time to be a fan. And stupid as it is, probably the most connected we felt to the club. And no coincidence that that's also been the emergence of a lot of young talent coming into the side. It makes me feel even more old than I do to think that the first one of those was the emergence of Rashford, and the second one has been Garnacho and Mainu. The one thing I will say is we talked a lot about game model and Ten Hag's inconsistency with that, and perhaps not knowing what it is. And one thing that you've talked about over the last 6 months, and I'm giving you the compliment of acknowledging that you sort of popularised this concept of conversation. Is that they're Ratcliffe and INEOS have sort of said that it's going to be our style of play, and they've sort of pushed that and said that they've impressed that that's going to be what the manager does. Now, that's a risk in itself, because who was to say that they know what the United's thing is? United is a peculiar environment, like Liverpool, and I think United and Liverpool probably the two in English football where you can't get away with it. You have to play a certain way. Arsenal, you can change your complete identity, as Wenger proved.
Yeah.
And
George Graham to Wenger to Arteta, like all completely
exactly, yeah.
Different.
They're quite wildly supportive of all of those and proud of all of those. It's like sort of chameleon team club in a way, even though they're so strongly identifiable with those traits. United and Liverpool, not so much. The club itself, the supporter base, the stadium, as a kind of reaction. So I know you might want to have a little bit of a mischievous talk about supporters of match-going inclination, not having much of an opinion that matters. But I think that they do, because their reaction to what they see on the pitch is energy. And Manchester United and Liverpool, unfortunately, but you have to include them in the same energy football clubs. It means a lot. And you have to have been there. No, you don't have to have been there to understand that. I don't think so. I don't think you have to have been to any match to understand that. I think you can understand that. INEOS and Ratcliffe have to understand that before they start imposing that style on telling managers what they should and shouldn't do. They have to understand as much as Ten Hag does. Now, Ten Hag has had lived experience of this, but that's a very difficult thing to manage. Ferguson was managing it, but he was only really sort of controlling it towards the end of his era. We don't have timing of bringing on young players and everything like that. So I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to do,
sure.
And there are different ways to do it. But I'm as cautiously pessimistic about INEOS and Ratcliffe knowing what that style is as I am Ten Hag, and that then means there's three elements that need to come together. It being right in the first place, and their two opinions being right. So
yeah. Well, look, I think that's a fair comment, right? Which is, by the way, Ten Hag has talked about the Manchester United way. He didn't call it that. He said we look back into the history of Manchester United and their fast attacking football, right? So he's thought about this. He's just muddled in his thinking about. He wants that, plus he wants a defence he can kind of cope with. Do the new executive team understand Manchester United deeply? I mean, it's kind of interesting. I don't know one way or another, but they're not steeped in Manchester United, are they? Ashworth is a Wilcox, Blackburn legend, Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada, who's been at City Group for the last 15 years or whatever it is. I see Ratcliffe, United fan from Bury. Or Failsworth. Maybe he does, but he's been living in Monaco for years. So it's really hard to know how steep they are. I mean, they're going to get reaction from fans, but they are also in a bubble. I did note that they have been doing more open fans forums, which I believe Joel Glazer joined this time round, live and in person. So they'll get and they're close to must, for better or worse. They will be getting some pretty good fan feedback. You can, as an executive team in any organization, get in a bubble and not and get a lot of yes people, because everyone's keen to protect their ass.
Yeah.
It's the worst kind of leadership. So they could end up being there and not get it, I suppose. Who knows? On club style, I mean, I think the thinking is it's just like, let's not have these swings from polls to polls, which, whether you look at, say, just as an example, Tuchel might not fit that. But so I keep coming back to that. Like, I think that's their stated goal, that they want to feel like they're doing a thing. Now, whether they spread it across both the first team and the age group teams, and maybe even the other group clubs, it'll be kind of interesting, because Chelsea have said they're going to do that. For better or worse, not saying this is right, they are getting the Chelsea first team and the Strasbourg first team and the age group teams to play in the Maresca style. That's the goal, right? And high possession, high pressing, Guardiola-esque style of football. Will it work for them? No idea. and hasn't done so far, but they are ahead of us in the league, sadly.
Yeah.
But I think that's why they're doing it. So we don't have this mega debate when the benevolent dictator who's currently manager leaves. It's a total disaster, and we have to swap out 20 players, which, by the way, we've done for Ten Hag, 21 signings, some of them on loan.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wait for news from that executive meeting. I do think it's funny. There's in the film The Perfect Storm. Do you remember that one? There's a scene. I
haven't seen it, so tell me all about it.
Right. I know. I'm not going to go through it. There's just a scene where the older sort of father figure character points at the clouds and he says, "There's a storm coming," and then the younger character goes, "But what if it doesn't arrive? There's a storm coming in. It could destroy this town." And that's our headline. But what if it doesn't come? Town saved from storm. And I think the coverage of this INEOS meeting is exactly like that. They're like, this most important meeting in Manchester United's history. Ten Hag could be sacked. The club is cracking up.
Yeah.
We don't know what this meeting is about. Like, maybe Ten Hag is saved. Like, they don't know anything. So they have to fill column inches. Maybe they could just all write about Manchester City instead, right?
And they wouldn't sell their papers. That's the thing.
That's right. Yeah. Manchester United are irrelevant, even though we form 95% of Sky Sports News' coverage. As far as
they went for it last week. Anyone who's watched my X feed as I went through who's who
X-rated.
Of 90s mid-table squad fillers. Good grief. They were all there. Herman Ryderson wasn't. I predicted he'd join the panel, but he didn't. Perhaps he was on Indian TV or international TV or American TV talking about it. I don't know. But yeah, everyone was keen to give an opinion on how irrelevant we are, Ed. And all I can say is point proven. Point proven.
Yeah, I know.
Lads, you've made the point.
You're so irrelevant. We're going to talk about you for the next 4 hours without breathing. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, look, since we're on the media, Brent has said in the Telegraph interview today, which I'm sure everybody has seen, that he's been to Old Trafford and Match Gang fans' opinions are terrible. I disagree with both parts of that statement. One, I'm not sure he's been to Old Trafford. And two, Match Gang fans aren't terrible. They're just a broad range of fans, right? It's not a monolith. But what was your take on this?
Yeah, I don't normally like to wade into these waters because of the inevitables or, you're jealous, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about this before.
Yeah. Best-selling author, Wayne, rising to number one in the book charts without having even published the bloody book. So,
can we talk about that instead? Yeah, that's good. Well, it was actually not. It was top of the hot new releases, which is a different thing, but still good. Yeah.
Talking about X-rated.
Put the pre-order link in the descriptions for everyone.
Show notes. I will.
I'm not going to
show notes and in the YouTube feed. Yeah.
I won't give it a plug, but I will. My only comment on which we said before coming on air was that the only comment I have on the individual is that it is hilarious to me that someone speaks about themselves in third person when they're in character. Which is amazing. I mean, I'll take him seriously.
He's pure Al Pacino. He's method all the way. So
yeah, I will. I'll not discount him. I'm going to take him seriously. I'm going to say, I'm sure he has been to Old Trafford. I'll take him seriously on the individual that he is and not the character that he is, right? So I'm going to also presume that the opinion that he's allowed to be put out there is his opinion and not his character's opinion. And I will say it's a dangerous thing to say because, I mean, obviously the point is the reason why this character incites so much hatred is because he incites so much hatred himself. Do you know, he invites it.
It's by design.
It. Yeah,
it's
so
not an accident.
It's part of the cycle that he curates and he enjoys that. As what has brought him his notoriety and his fortune. So in that respect, there's part of the game that he plays. I will say we've all sat next to a knobhead at a football match. You know, I remember 20. For years it was like gigs can't cross. I remember that. There was a guy sat in front of me for years who would say that. And sometimes he couldn't, but he clearly could as well. But if you get that, you always get that. Someone will hate someone. So there's that thing. But like I just said earlier, I won't discount anyone around the world who supports a football team, whether they've been or not. It's not the way that I would frame a supporter. We've all got different ways of doing things, and people who I've been to, you are in a different corner of the world, and I'm like, you tell me you get up at 4:00 to watch us get spanked 3-0 against someone. I'm like, oh, Ed, I feel sorry for you. I feel better that I was at the match watching it, and I didn't feel good, but I feel sorry for you. And like, there are people who, I know. Sorry,
I mean, sorry. Look, I do think this is a kind of pointless argument. And as someone who spent an inordinate amount of time going to games, home away Europe and stuff like that when I was younger, and now I live abroad, it's obviously impossible to do that. So felt both ends of this. There's nothing like the experience of being in the stadium. You can't replicate it. There's no pub or family gathering or bleary-eyed getting up at 4 a.m. watching it half asleep. That will replicate that feeling, right? It doesn't change everyone's opinion of what's going on. I mean, like, you watch a game, TV coverage is great. There's 50,000 different angles. Like, you can understand what's going on. Like, don't think that's it. I mean, like, it's better than front row of, I've been many parts of Old Trafford. I had season ticket I used to go in the Stretford end until they knocked it down. So I was there for 10 years or whatever. And then in the South Stand, where with the camber of the Old Trafford pitch, you couldn't see the ball when it was over on the far side. So I don't know whether that angle was particularly good for any kind of analysis of the game. Could abuse the away players though, which was good fun. And then I was in the North Stand for many years, sat next to a nice old lady and her daughter. I was like, where are you guys from then? And she said the village, which is just on the suburbs of Manchester. And I said, oh yeah, what's your name? And she gave me her name, and her second name was the name of the village. I was like, oh, are you like the dame of this area then? And she's like, yes. It's like, great.
Oh dear. Yeah, but I mean, the point, the overriding point is that you've been both ends of that spectrum. Unfortunately, you can't go every week now, but you wouldn't be in a position where you would villainize or weaponize your non-going support as being more deserving of having an opinion than someone who does go. Yeah. And nobody in their right mind would, who's actually been to games, who's followed the team home and away, who's been to cup finals and watched us lose and watched us be miserably beaten, having been on that journey, having watched us like you were in the late 80s. I'm a little bit younger than you, Ed, so I wasn't in the cold terraces of watching us in the darker days under Sir Alex, when you'd never thought, well, much like today, like sitting watching us lose 5-0. I've got old guys around me when they're not, when it's not a European game and they're not being occupied by Galatasaray fans. We have some old timers who are sat around us, and if we're getting embarrassed, they'll get home quick. They'll leave on 75 minutes. I'm not there to judge them for that, because they're old guys. You know what I mean? They've been through long fallow periods, and I'm not going to tell someone who's like in his 80s that he supports United less than me because he leaves 10 minutes early because he's sick of watching us lose 4-0 again, or he doesn't want to see us lose 4-0. He'd rather pause the match at 2-0 and get out of there. I'm not going to judge him for that. And I'm not going to tell him that his opinion doesn't mean anything, even if he is telling me that Bruno's crap and I disagree with his opinion, or if he's Garnacho's going to be a waster, because everyone's got their opinion. Everyone's opinion is different. And
go on, name and change this old guy. I want to know.
No. Okay. I love him to bits. He's great. But the point is, you would never, for someone who's made a living from saying the fans' opinion matters, to go on a national platform and invalidate opinions of match-winning supporters is only part of the weaponizing the and mobilizing the audience that he's got. And hopefully, I mean, most match-going rational supporters would see that. Those who aren't just up for an argument on social media, things are difficult enough following United without telling someone that their opinion about following the team that they loathe is not valid because they spend thousands of pounds doing so. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Let's get to some questions, because we've got a few silly ones and a few relevant ones. All right, let's do some of that. We've done this before, but Stretford End Arising says, what are your views on how United should proceed with the stadium in terms of new/redevelopment? And boring finance question, what funding structure, in your opinion, would United seek to put in place to pay for it? Thanks. I mean, the first one, maybe quickly, your view. Now it looks almost certain that we're getting a new stadium rather than a redevelopment. Have you come to terms with this? I think you were at terms with it before.
Yeah, much the same. I think, it's probably the right thing. And it is part of United's cultural identity and past to move when they outgrow their facilities. So I'll just bang the drum for that. For anyone who thinks, you're abandoning your heritage and everything like that. It's tradition. Tradition is still to move as well. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
You can honor you can honor the past and move forward. And United have always done that. So that's all right. How we would fund it? Well, let's take the Premier League's ongoing legal battles as a frame of reference, because we've unsuccessfully tried to get Joe Public to fund it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we can find, maybe if City are going to be so kind as they've got so much money now that they'll be sponsoring the Premier League.
City will fund it for us. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Maybe. Well,
I know exactly how they'll fund it, Wayne. They will take out a boring finance question, right? This is a guy who used to be a private equity. He used to be a private equity guy, and he's treated his company INEOS very much like that by buying up minority then majority stakes in failing companies and piecing them together as a conglomerate, right? Much like you would with a portfolio if you were doing late stage private equity. They're moving, I'd say, more rapidly with this one, and they structured it in a way where they can go from minority to majority. So VC fund to private equity. And so I think the financing model's like exactly how you would do it if you were a growing company, which in US financial markets is typically, assuming they take out some kind of global bond, right? It's typically $1 billion and up, right? So they're heading there. They're heading into the $1 billion revenue territory, and they'll finance this with some kind of long-term bond or bonds. Yeah. So they'll put it out there with a ticket which will be reasonable because interest rates are coming down. And if Sir Jim was really bold and did not want to, and there'll be a separate company created in order to do that. This is much the way that Tottenham have done it, and you hope to generate more revenue than there are costs. This really can't happen until Sir Jim owns the whole thing. If he was feeling really generous, now he can no longer, sadly, just lend the club a couple of £1 billion in order to build it at 0% interest, but he could do that and then convert it to equity straight away once he owns the whole club. I suspect he won't do that because using someone else's money is always less risky. Yeah. Not cheaper, but less risky. And he will be of the opinion that a new stadium would generate vast amounts of money through fan experiences and executive suites and more seats and all of that kind of stuff. So, boring finance question. All right. There's quite a lot of silly ones in here as well.
Good.
Jamie H says, apparently Brian Robson was 1% of our turnover back in the day. If we were allowed to spend 1% of our current turnover, is there anyone in world football as good as Robert? It was much more. He was 1.5 million on a turnover that I'm guessing, I don't actually have the figures, but it was about 25 million in 1992 when the Premier League started. So I'm going to say it was about half of that in 1981.
Less than that.
Less than half. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. So that's more like 15% of turnover. 15% turnover now on 700 million is what? Do the maths, Wayne. It's 8, 9, 10 million. You can buy anyone of any quality for 10 million. Manchester City reserves who've never kicked a football in their lives go for more than 10 million.
But move it the other way. Maybe Jamie meant it the other way. So take the proportion of revenue. Robson, so maybe 25% of the revenue.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. Now we're getting somewhere. That's 175
million pound.
Yeah. You could get someone decent for that.
Who's at Ajax? Who's at Ajax?
The Ajax left back who can barely kick a football. An absolute fucking clogger. 150 million, no probs.
We need a left back. No, you could get. I mean, You could get the modern Brian Robson, Jude Bellingham. You couldn't buy him out of his contract, but you would probably get that fee would be,
would get someone of that quality. Maybe we should go and buy his brother. He's playing in England.
He looks pretty good. You see, he scored a great goal for Sunderland last week.
Yeah.
By Job, he did it.
Job, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Talking of Sunderland, the last-minute goal they scored against Leeds that went through Ilan Messier's legs. He blamed the spin. He was like, that Shane Warne's ball of the century. It broke like a leg spinner and went at right angles. Yeah, right, mate. Yeah. You made an absolute cock of yourself.
Yeah.
Mick says, why didn't United go for a goal scorer in the summer? Also for Wayne, any positive spins during the shite we're all going through this season? Is Wayne the guy to give you a positive spin? Well, bloody hell, things are going bad if Wayne's the cheery one.
Yeah, oh dear, yeah.
Well, I mean, United did buy a striker in the summer. It's just not a regular goal scorer. I mean, they couldn't get Harry Kane. Tottenham weren't prepared to sell. They see us as rivals, probably in the league table correctly at the moment. And so he ended up somewhere else, right? The Kane was a non-starter. I'm sure Kane would have come if United could have done that deal.
Yeah. Well, I beg to differ on Xerxes. You call him a striker. I'm not sure he is. I'm going to offer you a different position. I'm going to create a position. I'm going to call it... No, that actually exists. You just haven't seen it at Manchester United for a long time. I'm going to create a magical position that has never existed, but exists now. It's called Rondo. And what this player does, he's basically the Rondo player on the football pitch. So he doesn't do anything apart from there's a pattern of three and he joins in the triangle. He's the Rondo player in the triangle. So he doesn't actually, he moves the play, but he doesn't do anything apart from move the play. And I know that sounds like I'm being cruel to Xerxes. That's on the material and the evidence seen so far. That's how I would describe him, because he doesn't move like a centre forward. He doesn't show, apart from the goal he scored against Fulham, he doesn't show instinct like a centre forward. In fact, he shows a lot of frustration in those kind of positions with himself. And I'm really not trying to be cruel, because I was trying to think of the best way to describe him, because he's not a number 10 and he's not an attacking midfielder, because he doesn't do the things like that. But Rondo is the player who is the third person to move the play on, but he doesn't do much else apart from that.
Some of our nicest football this season has been with him in the team. It just wasn't didn't create much. He's not a creator, right? He's not playing through balls to other players, not playing other players in. Yeah. He passes and moves in the old Liverpool style. All right, so, Anthony.
Hang on.
Sorry. Go ahead.
You've not let me be positive. Yeah. I've been asked to be positive. And I did see the question, and I have thought about this.
Oh.
And I haven't got an answer, so let's move on to the next question.
Fucking hell. Anthony says, SJR stated in an interview last year regarding how United play, we'll decide the style and the coach will have to play this style. Many of the new INEOS team are in situ, but given this clear mantra, are we correct to attribute all the current opprobrium to Ten Hag himself? Yeah, kind of interesting. So, I mean, I think the quote's slightly wrong there, but the spirit is correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the second, I don't think Ten Hag has implemented a clear style. I mean, I know we talked about this earlier in the pod, so I don't need to labour it, but I don't think he's implemented a clear style at all. And in fact, that may be the thing that gets him fired eventually, where they're like, well, we're trying to move in this direction and you're resistant to it.
Possibly. I would say that I think the point's right. Where do we, who should we be angry at? Yeah. But maybe it's a dangerous game to articulate. It does lean on what we were talking about earlier, who sets the tone and who actually knows what the right thing for that philosophy is. And they could, INEOS and Ratcliffe and the management team could say this is the right style to play. And it could be completely oil and water with Old Trafford, and Old Trafford will react a different way. So no matter who the manager is, you can keep hiring and firing the managers, but the truth is that you've got it wrong and you refuse to change your direction because you don't understand. So there's that element to it. And I think it's a good point, but until we know what that is if it's articulated and put on a big blackboard. I mean, we all know it to see it. And obviously, like the book that you're going to very kindly plug in the comment in the show notes for me is my.
What's it called, Wayne? While you're plugging it, what's it called?
Football Taught by Matt Busby. It's my attempt at articulating this, right? And it's taken me 140,000 words and 11 years of research to do so. And this is just my attempt. I don't know if I've got it right or not. It's my feeling of what it is. So unless there is someone out there articulating what it is from a United perspective, articulating what they want, so the fans know what it is transparently to look at, and how far that diverges away from what the manager's doing. And like I said earlier, that's not necessarily a good thing to do, but unless you have it there, you don't know, right? Unless you're winning things and you go, oh, this was our plan all along. But then again, what we were talking about, teams resistant to change, Liverpool, perfect example. But as soon as Rafael Benitez came along with, what did Valdano call it at Real Madrid? What did he call it? Shit on a stick football. But they were quite happy to take it because they won them a Premier League. And they loved Benitez as well. And there's
Premier League.
A cult of... No,
European
absolutely
Cup.
not.
Yeah.
There's a cult of United supporters who still love Mourinho and will not accept that his football was dreadful because of the fact that he won a couple of trophies. You would have thought that cult would have dissipated by the fact we've won a couple of trophies under Ten Hag. Unfortunately, the cult of Mourinho still thrives. It's alive and well, and they will just not be told. But the point is there that there's a resistance. Blah, 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 blah,
Wayne,
blah, blah.
140,000 words in 11 years is used being concise and getting to the point. Some would say, yes. I would not. That would be cruel.
No, right.
Ian McIver says, what does it take for Ten Hag to get sacked, go on a Just Stop Oil march? I mean, maybe that would work. Or he could profess his love for Kim Jong-un or one of several wars going on around the world. Maybe that would help. I don't know. Just Stop Oil would probably be the one that did it, though, given Ratcliffe's... maybe he could come out as anti-fracking. Then Ratcliffe would...
sleep with the physio's wife.
Daughter. The physio's wife. Well, that has done it before, yeah.
I'm going Doherty. I'm not going David Moyes. It wasn't David
allegedly,
Moyes,
allegedly, yeah.
And it wasn't David Moyes. It was a player, allegedly. That's what that story was about. So, what would it take? I honestly, apart from the joke about the oil thing, I think the linesman's flag has saved him a few times. I mean, we could have another goal against Bournemouth last December. That would have done it. Another goal
Coventry.
for Liverpool.
Coventry.
Yeah, exactly. Coventry. Liverpool scoring 4 or Spurs scoring 4 recently, I think would have done it. So I think it's not necessarily the heavy defeat, it's the margin of it. Palace, he was saved by the end of the season there. So I understand what's been asked in terms of, like, it feels like he's got away with it so many times, but I feel like it is. You won't get another one of those in the next, after the international break to the next international break. He can't survive another one of those. I would think.
Yeah. All right, let's get some.
Any more fun ones? Yeah, I was going to say fun ones. These have become decidedly downturn, and I was trying to be positive about this.
I know. Okay, let's round out with a couple. Tariq Amir, friend of the pod, says, what are Wayne's key principles when it comes to writing books? Is there a general structure he adopts when producing the book? Or does the approach change from title to title? Rather like Ten Hag, have you got a book philosophy? Have you got a book model you deploy as your favourite?
It's funny, actually, yeah, because I was talking about this the other day. Like, I've been so lucky that, and thanks, Tariq, for, first of all, the great question, because it's about me. And second of all,
there's a part 2 to this, which I'll come back to, but go on.
Is that about me? Or I'm going to have to be quick on it. So, okay, right. Quick for me. So, yeah, I was talking about this the other day because I have been very lucky that I haven't had a lot of criticism for the books I've done. And because I've enjoyed a nicer reputation with each book, especially the last 5 years or so, I'm very conscious of that. And the way I'm trying to avoid ruining that, because obviously it will end at some point. You can't always say that it's a upwards trajectory. Someone will say at some point that's not as good as what you did before, or your writing suffered. So the way that I try to avoid that is, first of all, to always make sure that my writing, I'm using new techniques with my writing. So there's always a risk that you can write in a style that someone doesn't agree with. The research is always going to be spot on. So I'm always trying to find more new things all the time. So you can always be assured that when you're reading something of mine, you will be introduced to something new about United's past that you don't know. So as long as there's that in there. But the way that I get around it mostly is because of the nature of the books I do. I can't be in control of the order in which they're published, but I can be, control of the order in which I write them. So I don't try to write like the same kind of book twice in a row. So I won't do like multiple biographies in a row. There'll be like a biography, then a period piece about something. And that way it mixes it up. And then the reader knows that they can expect something a little bit different. And it'll be a completely different period. I'll jump from piece to piece. I mean, it's difficult sometimes because there are things that interest me that are similar to something that I've just finished on. And, like you go off on a tangent, as I often do, but I'll do that with writing a complete idea. And I'll be like, I just want to visit that idea, even though it's a tangent away from what I was doing. So it's not a million miles away from. I wasn't even going to try and pronounce the word then because we've had trouble.
Your next book, The History of the English Language and How to Use It.
Anyway, which we can tell I'm struggling with today. But anyway, that's how I do it. And, obviously I'm very lucky that I have a number of publishers who I work with and a couple that I've got really strong relationships with who can and my literary agent will bat me on the nose and tell me if something's a terrible idea or not. And it's enough to keep it fresh and hopefully, even if there's a deviation in the quality of writing because the material's fresh, but it's kind of a trick of the writer to sort of make you think that there's not a lull period in there. I don't know. But the other thing around it is also ego stroking to the extent of like, I know that everyone will have their own favorite book. So like, I'll be told that people's favorites are the Jimmy Murphy book, and that was 7 years ago nearly, and the George Best one that was 3 years ago. So I've got to accept that some people, I'm not going to pass that. I just have to match my own standard of what my writing is. So thank you, Tariq, for that lovely question.
I am writing a history of Manchester United, history of Manchester City before 2008. It's just 50 blank pages. Which United player would he like to write the official Wayne Barton autobiography, and why is it Steve Bruce? I'm just going to leave that there as a comment. Steve Bruce being an author, by the way. Bruce, I don't know why these tie together. I don't think this is Steve. Says, has Wayne read much Hemingway? I have to say, I mean, I'm going to answer this personally. Didn't really like it, but I have been to two of Hemingway's houses in Paris and in Key West.
Yeah, so I'm more Oscar Wilde than Sylvia Plath.
Oscar Wilde, what a history he has. Absolutely wild. All right. Chris Edgingham, friend of the pod, resident Scouser, says, which Simpsons character would do a better job than Ten Hag? I had to think about this one because it was kind of important. Like, you got to get it right. It's obviously not Homer because he'd make an absolute... I think actually Ten Hag is the Homer Simpson of managers. He's like, look at Homer's car where it's just a jumble of ideas. That's Ten Hag, that is. It's not Mayor Quimby because he just does whatever the person says to him last. It's not... I mean, it could be groundskeeper Willie, but I don't know about that. I kind of...
Scottish background. The Scottish background you've got there.
Yeah. I landed on Nelson Muntz, because he's the school bully. I think he would be the Roy Keane of managers, and he either bully our team into playing better or wedge the opposition. And there you go.
Yeah, there's two different answers I've got. The first one, I answered this one in tweet because it was the best question by far on the pod. So I had to find because it made me instantly think of the one where Flanders is coaching the football team and Homer's sat in the stand and he just goes, Flanders. And Flanders turns around and he's just like pretending that he hasn't said anything. He turns back around and he goes, Flanders. And he basically goes like, oh, do you think you could do a better job? And he goes, yeah. So he goes down and he manages the team. So Homer from that one. But then there's the other one. There's the coach who, this is a bit of obscure Simpsons reference, but thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity to reference it. The one who he's Lisa's dodgeball coach, and he keeps throwing the ball. He's like, bombardment, bombardment. And then for the rest of that episode, inexplicably, this coach is in different scenes, and he's in the restaurant and he throws the dodgeball. He's going bombardment in the restaurant to Lisa while she's in the restaurant. So I think that guy, bombardment coach, because United is a full-time responsibility. It's not just 90 minutes on the pitch. You have to be constantly aware of your responsibility in a red shirt. So bombardment coach is going to be there all the time, throwing the dodgeball at your head to tell you just how much it means to play for Manchester United. So him.
Okay. Do you know the 5 rules of dodgeball? Dodge, duck, dive, dodge and duck, or something like that, isn't it? I can't remember now. There you go.
Okay.
Ruined that reference from whenever that one was, early 2000s. All right, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone, for getting involved, sending us questions, listening, or watching. You can drop into Patreon if you want to get our 2 Blacklist shows a week, or also on Apple Podcasts in the Apple Podcast feed, or follow us on YouTube if you want to see our lovely faces. And I will leave it there. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone else. Bye now.